Over the weekend, Saturday, it was a massive and brilliant show in Tottenham, doubleheader. First, we'll start with the co-main. Start with Conor Benn, Raheem. I think what the question is we know he trains hard. We know the man can fight, but it's a question of levels. Yeah, is he world quality? Is he world quality? Beat a former champion, a puncher, but a man on his last legs. A man in Regis Prograis announced it was his final bout afterwards. And the question I have for you, Rayo Raheem, you cover Conor Benn, you're overseas in England, you know these men well, seen their stories, seen him rise from prospect at domestic level, fighting on Netflix, had the fight of the year last year with Chris Eubank Jr. It's a question of quality. It's not a question of the man. The man can fight. The man's explosive. Again, he trains hard. What did you think of his quality Saturday night, Tottenham?
The question of quality comes down to whether or not quality is even the question anymore. I believe we've had two back-to-back fight weeks that called that question into question. Did he get 15 million for quality? Or did he get 15 million for consumption? Because they believed he could drive the market for people to consume this fight on a level that would be worth that kind of money. Is he being paid for the narrative and for the stature for being fight of the year last year, for filling Tottenham Stadium twice in a row? This meant to be the third time off the back of the first two. Or did he get paid that kind of money so that he would be in position to win a world title and be the top of his division, whatever division that is? We don't even know at this point. Well, I suggest to you, it's the former. People are talking about the level that Conor Benn didn't reach in the fight, but the question that has been answered is that really that's no longer what's driving the bottom line, what is getting the bag. You have had your criticism about the Turkey Al-Sheikh era, and I've defended it almost every time that you've had a criticism, while accepting what you see, maybe looking at it from a different perspective and finding the good in it. Well, there's good in that, and what I'm saying right now is not wholly bad. But I do see the downside of what you're talking about when you mean, well, you gotta eat what you kill, and looking back at what may be a romantic look at the generation before, if you will, when Heyman was doing his thing his way, which wasn't also not really the traditional way. And even before that, with Don King and, obviously the Arams and all of that's all in there. But the now is becoming more and more blatantly commercial and less substance. And I'm believing that the balance in the scale is now being tipped in a way that we have to acknowledge something's happening. I've been a defender of the quality of type of fights that we've been getting in this Al-Sheikh era, and I'm not backtracking from any of that, but I also am able to see a tipping point. And I think from Joshua Paul to Wilder Chisora, now to Ben-Prograis, there's a trend that you can see developing here. The Zuffa of it all, even the Crawford Canelo, which is not a fight I'm prepared to delegitimize. It's a legitimate fight, but also it's a sensation. There's a sensational element to it. There's a commercial viability to it. There's a novelty element to it that make it less traditional than what we're accustomed to making money in boxing. That trend is being set upon us. And I'm watching people react to these recent fights, not acknowledging that maybe that ain't the criteria by which fights are being made anymore.
Yeah, it's about bums and seats, I think is what you're saying. World quality level is one thing, but is he Is he value for dollar for putting bombs in seats? But to shake the bad British accent now, you got right to the real topic at hand, which we could discuss the X's and O's of the fight and all that. But he was given, this was the $15 million fight, right? And they got that money from Turkey to do that, to kind of shut Eddie Hearn up. But I don't know. I think Eddie Hearn feels probably good this morning about not spending $15 million on a fight like that. But yeah, I remember years ago talking with you, and I like it when things would get heated at weigh-ins, and if a push happened, I liked that most of the time, and guys started talking their shit at weigh-ins and at press conferences, and it's not that you didn't like it, but you were always trying to keep boxing away from the WWFification of the sport. And I think from the call out in Fury's fight, which we'll get into later and all that, it feels more like that than ever in some ways, although it's always been an element of boxing. But yeah, I think, yeah, you got right to the heart of the matter there. Was that worthy of a $15 million performance? And I don't know, the whole positioning of that was odd, because it was supposed to be his fight as a Zuffa fighter, right? And there was no mention of Zuffa really on the broadcast. And yeah, take it from there, man. Yeah,
there's no Dana White, there's no Zuffa, there's no Zuffa belt, there's no connection whatsoever, there's no branding. I mean, UFC had another fight happening where Dana was, right?
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, UFC was last night. And not only that, when you say put bums in seats, well, now listen, that ain't nothing new. That's always been part and parcel of the dynamic. The way you put bums in seats, though, is what is now changing, because Tottenham Spurs Stadium was not sold out. It was full, but I guarantee you 100% those are not sold tickets. He gave a truckload of tickets away. Great, good on him. I wish boxing would do that more often, even when there's more ticket demand. There should be an opportunity for people to go see fights of this magnitude, especially when there's that many seats to be had and that much money in the coffer. Let some people get in there for pennies on the dollar. I'm all about that. But the reality is the interest, the organic interest did not justify a Tottenham Spurs Stadium for Conor or Tyson, certainly not Magomedov and Prograis. So what was the actual payoff? It's a Netflix narrative. They're selling now something of a reality show type of spin. You see the drama with Conor Benn and Eddie. You've got the comeback of Tyson, and early on when it was announced, is Queensberry and Frank still involved? Is Turkey T stealing him? We're clearly here to set up a reality show style narrative to put forward Joshua and Fury. We've got this fight the day before Home with the Furies premieres on Netflix. It's hit the tipping point of where we're getting commercial. And yes, I know, I don't want to jump the gun. We're not going to get into that call out right at this minute, but all of that is in the mix. So what you will have are fight nights like this that don't reach the level of the anticipation, because the anticipation is all spent around a commercial narrative that's not really the sport, right? If you'll remember, even UFC began with a reality show. Like, usually that's where you might start. Yeah. If you have a sport that you're bringing into the awareness of the community. And of course, I'm a big narrative guy. I love narratives in boxing. Organic ones, natural ones that bring you to a natural conclusion, that take you to a natural place. And this is beginning to the point where it's unnatural. The faux retirement of Fury, the fifth of its kind. The way the media is leaning now towards influencers as opposed to journalists. I mean, writers are way out in the sticks. Like, you really gotta love boxing and do a deep dive if you're reading boxing articles these days. And the pundits like ourselves and some of these writers now who have to get on camera if anybody's going to hear what they have to say, because so few people are reading anything, much less opinion articles about boxing. We're at a fork in the road, if not already past the Rubicon, at a crossroad. to me, these last 2 weeks really encapsulate where boxing is headed and gives me pause to think about how we got here and if there is still time or even an option to change course.
Wow, I think you unpacked a lot there. And this is something you've been talking about since this whole reality TV show thing was the first thing you told me about after Zuffa won. And to your point, TNT now doing a deal with DAZN, they're going to launch a reality TV show. And right. So before Netflix even announced the Fury fight off the back of a reality TV show, and obviously months before, TNT and DAZN are talking about a reality TV show with Matchroom, with Queensberry, with Golden Boy, with Top Rank. You continue to do this reality TV thing, and funny enough, taking it back to your interview with Chris Eubank Sr. last year ahead of fight number 1 that they had, he's saying, don't let this become WWE. And then I pointed out, well, Chris, you know, the powers that be that your son is performing for in this fight are literally steering the sport towards the people that own WWE. So, yeah, it's all very interesting to hear you cook about that, and to take. There's a thought that escapes me there. If you could input again before I am able to,
Okay, so think about this. I like that you brought up the first Eubank Ben fight, right? The moment that resonates in everybody's mind, even those on the continental United States shores who may not consider this fight of the year or had their reservations about the validity of the action, the one moment that resonates globally is Eubank and Eubank Sr. stepping out of that car together. It was a narrative moment. There's not a single moment in that fight that even I or the biggest fans of Conor or Chris on this side can point to uniformly and be like, man, that was a huge moment. Even in the 12th round, yeah, with the whole round itself surely had some drama. But the moment by far that everybody points to is Eubank and his father stepping out of that car together, because the drama was built around their family narrative and the dissension within those close quarters. And last night could have had a very similar moment, because then once again the drama was built around something outside the ring. Imagine if Conor Benn steps out of his car with Eddie Hearn.
Yes.
Pandemonium, bro.
Yes.
Pandemonium.
God, I already...
If that had happened, nothing in the fight would have eclipsed that.
It just sucks because I shot these bullets off last year. Remember, I was like, they're pulling from.
I gave you your credit right from the beginning. I know you've said your things. I've been on the other side of that discussion. I'm standing by everything I said, as in there's positive and all the things, but the negatives that you were pointing out that hadn't really materialized yet, but you were warning. You can see on the horizon. This is what is happening. Well, it's no longer on the horizon. It's at our doorstep. This is what it is.
Well, another thing, go ahead.
I'm just saying that there's the best fight on the card was Clark and Hooney. Mm-hmm. And that was the first fight on the main card on Netflix. This card could have been flipped if you want to go for best entertainment, right? You could have had the main event as the opening bout. That was the worst bout, honestly, of the whole fight. And from then went right down the card, but instead go up the card, right? And the irony of that to me is that the opening bout had the least narrative discussed, but the most organic narrative available. Both of those guys got stopped by the current heavyweight champion of the world in Wardley.
Fabio Wardley.
both in fights that either, in Hooney's case, he was winning and was thought to be on his way to a victory until he gets a 10th round stoppage, a knockout. I have to remind you that when that fight got made, Eddie Hearn was laughing at Frank Warren, saying, I can't even believe you made this fight. Like, your guy's out of his depth. This Worley's got no amateur pedigree. My guy is way sharper than him. You've set your guy up for the fall. I can't believe you asked for Hooney. He was laughing at him, which is why we got that shot of them ringside when Hooney gets knocked out, and, you know, Eddie's got that shit-eating grin. The narrative of Clark getting his head dented, his jaw sideways, or in the first round by Wardley in a rematch that people thought might be 50-50. Like, the fact that both of those guys now are seeking redemption after unimaginable stoppages. Really, only one comes through and has a future to look forward to, something that he can lean on and recalibrate and take into his next fight. And the other one is really up against it, as trying to make a case to be in the upper echelon of the heavyweight division. That fight had natural drama. That fight had organic narrative. None of this was really talked about to any extent. I won't say nowhere anybody talked about it. I don't know. Maybe somewhere somebody did put this dynamic together and talk about the fight that way, but not that I saw. And certainly not to any great not to any great reception. And granted, it's the opening fight on a Netflix card, so surely it's not going to be discussed the most, but it's the most genuine one. And the fact that that is not only the opening bout, but the best fight on the card, with the realest narrative, with the least attention, that is a great example of where we are. And if we don't take a look at it and where we're going, that's how it's going to be. That's how it's you're going to end up with nights like this kind of on a regular basis.
Yeah. You can't simulate organic spontaneity, rising into something that becomes special and beloved. And yeah, you could even in in wrestling, that sometimes the promoter would try to push a certain guy, but it's the guy lower on the card who's just organically becoming an actual star by the audience, just, that organic build that eventually becomes The Rock or whomever. It's not always the guy, the Lex Express, to use a wrestling term. A lot of fans will pick up on. Another thing I want to give you credit here for, and then we'll get into the fight itself, though, is you talked about these. When they broke up the oil monopoly in the early 20th century, and then it got shattered into what is now Texaco and Chevron and Sinclair and Mobil and all this, you said that's what's happening in boxing right now. You said it's not just going to be perhaps Zuffa TKO and that's it, and they now have monopolized boxing under the TKO umbrella. You said, but it's going to be the same players essentially holding all the strings. You look at how, okay, DAZN gets this deal with TNT, and I'm sorry to the audience that's going to be upset. They just came here to hear Conor Benn and Regis Prograis, but here we are. You get to how TNT's about to be acquired by Paramount in this Paramount Warner Brothers Discovery thing, which has the same kind of financial backings of DAZN, okay? A lot of money from various Middle East countries, Saudi, Israel, UAE, the Paramount Warner Brothers Discovery merger, backed by the same kind of economic and political forces. So I don't know, that bit. Maybe we'll have to have that for another episode. But we can now segue into the fight itself, which it's funny. I scored it a shutout, actually, for Conor Benn. And the official judges in Netflix had it a little closer. They gave some more credit to Regis Prograis. And despite it being a shutout on my card, I was almost more impressed with Regis Prograis. Kind of like when we covered Shane Mosley Jr. against Jesus Ramos back in December, and Ramos clearly beat Mosley, but you were almost tempted to give more credit to Mosley, even though Ramos was fine that night. He performed well. You felt like he gave 100%. He gave 110%. He optimized whatever he could have done in his performance on that night. And I feel like Prograis, he passed his test. Like, of course, the object is always to win. But what turned out to be the last fight of his career, where he was injured, all right, despite what he told us about that action, but we like Regis, it's all good. Where he straight up lied to us, but that's okay. What do you know? What do you know, people at home? We get lied to. But his best realistic scenario was don't get hurt, don't get knocked out, don't get put on the highlight reel. See if you can make it the distance. See if you can make this guy who's much younger than you and fresher than you and at this stage faster and quicker than you, see if you could make him look ordinary. And he did that. I thought he came out with the best realistic scenario for himself. Now, Conor Benn's best case realistic scenario for himself was bomb him out, make a statement, coming off the biggest moment of your career and get it, scoring a revenge for your last name in that fight, those two fights last year. Back to the welterweight division. Not only am I a ticket seller, but I am a legit threat to the champions at welterweight. And he didn't accomplish that. And I almost became more impressed with Prograis subtly headbutting him, taking a page out of old school Bernard Hopkins, having just enough craftiness and head movement, and I do mean head movement, and because he didn't have like the whole upper body movement, so to speak, but he had enough to get his head off, his chin an inch or two off the line, dip it down, tuck it here and there, and enough to make him whiff on a lot of right hands or only partially land his blows. And to Conor Benn's credit, he did hurt him to the body in the 7th round. He made a few adjustments, but didn't put those adjustments together enough consistently to make you believe in his IQ and his craft against the best of the best in the world around this weight. He started bringing the left hook behind the right hands he was missing. He started investing to the body more. The 7th round, if he could have because that was the one round I think he hurt Prograis. But I was impressed by Prograis having a good poker face and not letting him know that. So, again, I scored it a clean sweep for Conor Benn. He did shorten up his shots when he hurt him to the body. He did some good things. I'm not saying he didn't. But the power, like everyone's saying, it didn't show up at this weight. And I said this after the fight. He looks like a tweener now, where in order for him to generate his pop, he's got to fight at a weight where he'd be against bigger men. And 154, he can't beat any of the champions there. 147, where the big fights are there for him, and he's fighting guys his own size, his pop isn't the same coming back down from 160, and hasn't been the same at that weight class for a few years now. So, yeah, he's in a tough spot in that regard. I don't think he beats Ryan Garcia. They might have to put him, if he wants to win a title, the best option might be go back to Eddie and make a Lewis Crocker fight.
The pressure was on Conor Benn from every corner. Pun intended. There was everything for him to prove, and nothing was expected of Prograis. I mean, metaphorically, Prograis limped into the fight, and in reality, literally limped out of the first round. There was nothing for Prograis to do other than show up, collect a check, not go down from the first punch, and he had an excuse as to how it all happened and went so wrong. However, because of the pedigree of Prograis' veteran experience, heart, determination, integrity, self-image, desire to go out on his shield if he had to go out, and I believe he felt like he not only had to go out into that ring, but he knew probably going in that this was the last time he'd be going out, if you understand what I mean. He probably knew, win, lose, or draw, I'm not doing this again. And he did lie to us. Bull face, flat foot, 10 toes down, lied to us multiple times. And I'm not shocked by this. I'm a little incredulous. I would have preferred him to be a little bit more diplomatic so that he couldn't be pinned down as a flat-faced, bold liar. He also owes Eddie Hearn an apology. Like, it's not cool. It's not cool how he did it because, listen, like, let me tell you, we remember what he said to us and then subsequently in other interviews, and you can't say that.
It's no better enemy. You know what I'm saying? It's no better enemy at all. You know, and what I want people to know is like, man, when you scared, bro, you go through it. Right. I was more than scared. I was terrified of fighting, you know, because of course everybody knew I was injured. I had all kinds of stuff going on in camp.
Audio's rough, but yeah, he was terrified of the fight.
I was terrified of the fight.
He had about 4 separate injuries.
Everybody knows I was injured. Well, that's an Eddie Hearn quote, that everybody knows you're injured.
Yeah.
And so, yes, if you get the question put to you the way we put it to him, you're going to need to do a little bit of weaving. I'm not expecting a fighter to go out there and be like, yeah, I am injured. Here's what's wrong with me. Here's what you should target. Here's what I'm not doing well.
Cancel my payday.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Surely he can't do that, and he probably was worried that they were going to try to replace him, and if he had admitted he was injured, maybe they would. Maybe the doctors take a closer look at whatever the injury is and disqualified him from fighting. I get all of that is baked in the cake. So you have to be clever, but you can't just flat out lie and then call somebody else a liar who's telling the truth. That ain't right. So in all of this, in the wake of this, Regis owes Eddie an apology. Not us.
No.
We're press. We're trying to get at it. We understand that you're not going to be straight with us. I would have preferred a little bit more respect so that you would at least be diplomatic about the lie so it's not so just blatant. But fine, I'll give you that. However, on the other side of it, you can't just say, oh, that guy, I don't know where that came from. That guy's totally, bullshit when you know it's true. That's a little side mission, but something I think is worth saying. What Prograis did, though, what the truth that he showed is he is a seasoned veteran, that he deserves to be regarded as a 2-time world champion, that he came in there with championship heart and mettle. And when the onslaught came, which was from the very first bell, Conor Benn came in there thinking he was going to be a firestorm. I'm sure Conor knew the injuries that were plaguing Prograis as well as, I guess, everybody else, and was trying to overwhelm him. And did the Conor Benn thing. I follow Conor Benn on socials. He follows me. I watch the workouts that he posts and such. That's exactly what he looks like on social media. That's how he fights. He's fully in his rhythm, fully in shape, doing the thing. And it wasn't enough to best a broken down, seasoned and experienced ex-world champion who had the determination and heart to stick in there, weather the storm, and give him some looks. I gave him a couple rounds also. It wasn't a shutout for me. I mean, he was far from being in the fight. At no point did I think this was competitive, like he was going to win it, but he got some rounds out of me. And what it proved was exactly what Prograis said ahead of the fight. There are levels. There are certain levels that you can attain in this science that even as a broken down 37-year-old last leg fighter, literally last leg, if you're able to use what you know and what you've experienced in the craft, you can take the onslaught of a young fighter who's not on your level. And what does it mean if Conor Benn is not on this version of Prograis' level? What does that mean for Ben? What doubts now does that, in the darkest moments of the night, when he's quiet and by himself and nobody else can hear him, what is he saying to himself, realizing that this fight went the distance, only wobbled Prograis at the end of the first round, and dare I say, with a punch after the bell. I saw the legs go weak, and in my mind I was like, uh-oh, this might be 3 rounds tops. But Prograis found a way. Yes, he got battered. I seen, of course, but he returned. He got some good shots in. Like I say, he got a couple of rounds, and he wasn't getting out of there. He didn't even go down in the fight. Mm-hmm. And Ben had every advantage, man. Every advantage. That's got to be That's got to be troubling. They say a win is a win, but in this case, you needed more than just the W. And that's literally all you got was the W.
That was the point of this exercise, was to get much more in the W. You're supposed to send him out with a bang. Again, credit to Prograis, because a fight I'll compare it to offhand was Luis Cuba Arias came in late replacement back on the Garcia Barrios card. You'll remember Luis Arias, right? Fighting Daniel Jacobs on HBO. Yeah. And shout out to Cuba. He does the media stuff we do now. But he came in late replacement to fight Amari Jones, a good puncher from Oakland who's undefeated right now. And Amari took him out in a couple of rounds. And it was like, that is what you were supposed to do to a veteran coming in. Not as late notice as Cuba came in, not even close, but still, that was the kind of format you were put into. You were supposed to bomb the veteran well past his best days out of there. And you couldn't do that. And actually, when you say he tries to overwhelm him, and Jojo Diaz, a badly faded former featherweight, super featherweight, hurt Regis Prograis and did much more damage than Conor Benn did. It's another indictment. But he wasn't even trying to be the destroyer that consistently, because he even as slow on the trigger as Regis was, he still respected his heavy hands. He still wasn't jumping in with the kind of abandon that he's one to do when he's really firing on all cylinders. Regis made him have to move around a lot and just get off first and use his quickness and his youth. He wasn't, at a certain point, he wasn't even loading up and pulling the trigger every time he punches, he tries to punch through the target, but he was cautious of Regis Prograis' power, even at the state Prograis was in. And so that makes me think you and Ryan Garcia, which once would be thought of as a cracker, would be a boring fight. Because if you're hesitant to jump in on Prograis, who you have such this speed advantage on, Garcia's going to be even faster than you. He hits extremely hard. I started to think that fight's going to be boring, because Conor Benn's not going to attack with the kind of abandon that we've seen him against lower opposition. So him and Shakur Stevenson, it would almost be comical, like how the Teofimo fight was, how out of position Shakur would put him in and make him reach for shots and be all kind of off balance. I mean, Chris Eubank Jr. did that to him in the first fight. So I think Shakur and Devin Haney would school him, and you could forget about the 154 champions and Ryan Garcia.
Listen, you can forget about all that shit. The only thing now, because we're doing the outside of the ring narrative, and the only way that the outside of the ring narrative and the inside of the ring narrative shall meet is against a matchroom fighter. So who's the matchroom fighter that makes the sense for Conor Benn?
Let me double check. Audience.
We're looking at Crocker, right?
Lewis Crocker.
Exactly. Right. Lewis Crocker, that story writes itself, Sean. That's the only place to go.
Because I said, you were like, Mario Barrios is known as the worst champ. I was like, no, Lewis Crocker.
You did say that. I thought that was a cold shot.
Yeah, it was. It wasn't fair. And Lewis Crocker is going to beat the fuck out of me if he ever sees me. And it probably rightfully so. But it is kind of fitting that
that's the only way to go. So then what begs the question is this: if this really was the $15 million fight, we know Lewis Crocker's not going to Zuffa, so that would mean that Ben's in the wild, right? Does Zuffa potentially promote a fighter off of the Zuffa platform? Is there some world in which they retain him as their fighter, but don't fight him on their platform so that he can, in fact, challenge for a world title that they don't recognize? In the beginning,
the running team, they might, because Jayo Pataya, IBF. Richardson Hitchens just signed, IBF. Conor Benn, Lewis Crocker, IBF.
I'm saying.
It's a fun thing they got going on. Maybe.
It's a constant little tweak of rationale, little acceptance here. We'll move the needle. We're not quite gonna do this. We're not gonna shut this out just yet. Like, to get into boxing, to get the top talent, to be a player, you are not going to be able to come in and just set down an entirely different universe and use the same beings that live on the planet that you set your new universe in. If you come in and want to have your own independent universe, you better have your own independent aliens. But they want to use existing fighters, and existing fighters in this existing reality are connected to exactly the structure of boxing as it exists. And if that is the play for Zuffa, that is crazy telling. Like, that is going to be very hard for them to justify. We don't know. Maybe that doesn't happen at all. But if it did, now we're down the path of like, well, this is all just smoke and mirrors. This is nonsense at that point. This is the Chevy Texaco nonsense. Like, we're just talking about different kinds of octane. It's all gas. You understand?
Well, no, but
so.
But like you said, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. But if it's not that, then what does Ben do? Is he going back to Matchroom?
There it is, the shot of the year. Conor Benn and Eddie Hearn reunited. There you go.
I mean, what would be more satisfying than for Eddie Hearn than for Lewis Crocker to beat Conor Benn? But what makes more sense as a business for Matchroom than to play into this narrative? Because remember, at the beginning of this whole controversy, the whole announcement that Zuffa was taking Ben and the phone call and Eddie holding his powder dry and letting Zuffa have that moment publicly, I said, well, how much of this is scripted, or at least everybody playing their role while they know what the script says? I'm not saying that it's what he wanted or he participated in it willingly, but if you know what the landscape is, you know where this is all headed, and all you really have to do is play your part, and ultimately it'll play out in your favor, or at least you'll get enough of what you want to be willing to play along. If this somehow becomes a Matchroom fight on DAZN, with or without Zuffa, we are in the full-blown theater, the theater era. You know? Where else is Conor Benn going?
Baby, come back.
Is he? It's either it was like Queensberry or Golden Boy, or I mean, where is Conor? Wherever Conor lands, if it is not Queensberry or Golden Boy, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense, except that this is all a bit of theater.
Baby, come back. You could blame it all on me. I was wrong, and I just can't live with it. Bow, 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 bow. Baby, come back. There you go.
Now, imagine this. What if Zuffa were to re-sign Conor, keep him in Zuffa, and not allow him to fight off the platform, so he will never challenge for a world title? But that might have been the plan if he had been dominant, if he had a super highlight, if he had looked great in this Prograis fight, then maybe off the back of that you could build the division around him in Zuffa. But you can't do that with that performance. So I'm in for the reality show narrative. I'm in for the spin. But it will be very telling. It will be very telling how the spin affects what's happening in the circle, the squared circle.
Okay, let's transition now to Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury, absolutely brilliant, massive at Tottenham. Came back, did the job against Arslanbek Makhmudov. Fight really devolved in the second half into a lot of clinching and back-to-back weeks of sloppy heavyweight fights with some of the biggest names of the last decade in Deontay Wilder beating Derek Chisora, and then Tyson Fury beating Arslanbek Makhmudov. Last week produced fireworks, ugly, sloppy fireworks, but fireworks. Multiple knockdowns, guys being hurt, both fighters being hurt in Wilder Chisora. This fight didn't maintain that action. You still saw a glimpse of some of the good stuff from Tyson Fury, mainly for me. The Larry Holmes up jab, the double feint. My favorite part of Tyson Fury's game throughout his career has been the and then off the up jab, and then out of both stances, he does it southpaw. Although when he's a southpaw, it's more of a slapping jab. But hey, Larry Holmes talked about the jab being like a slap sometimes. And he still worked in, he lands that up jab and then throws the uppercut. But I said Wilder Chisora would be a washed war. This was like a washed clinch fest, and I'm going to try to retire the word washed and shot a little bit, because these are warriors that we respect each and every one of them. And to me, Fury is was a great heavyweight, is a Hall of Famer, and Wilder's an all-time great puncher. So, but if I called Wilder washed last week, I will call Fury washed this week. And I said afterwards, Raheem, on Twitter, that Wilder, Joshua, and Fury are all in the Las Vegas stage act of their careers. Maybe this doesn't hold as true as it did for many decades, as you know, but back when you were a big name, but the sun had set on the prime of your career as a performer, you would go to Las Vegas and finish out your stay there. You'd finish out, get your checks there, and be a performer there. And I think what I'm saying is it's almost time for those three to exit stage left. And I'm thinking maybe Anthony Joshua could be the cleanup hitter. And when I thought about that, I said this is kind of a running theme for Joshua, because he was the cleanup hitter for the Klitschko era. He was the cleanup hitter for Francis Ngannou's foray into boxing. He's, for the time being, and to a degree, been the cleanup hitter for the Jake Paul shenanigans. Maybe now he could play the cleanup hitter for the faded trio of himself, Deontay Wilder, and Tyson Fury. Because to me, the real story of this division now is Moses Saitama, his ascension. Will that ascension coincide with the late reign of the great Alexander Usyk? Will those timelines cross paths at the same time in the next year or so? The momentum of quality fighters right now, like Fabio Wardley, Agit Kabayal, young guys like Richard Torres on the rise, that's the real center stage heavyweight act. And this is the kind of fun Las Vegas show. Go see Jerry Seinfeld at Caesars. He was once the biggest deal in comedy, just like these guys were the biggest deal in the heavyweight division. And if we're talking dollars and cents, perhaps they still are. But I'm talking about the substance of the heavyweight division. They're still going to draw more than Fabio Wardley and Agit Kabayal, easy, and Moses Saitama, and maybe even Alexander Usyk. But that's my thoughts on it. And Makhmudov had a disappointing effort in the second half of the fight. Fury, to give him credit, despite being the guy who's made way more money and being heavyweight champion, he kept continuing on to fight in every clinch and still wanted it more than Makhmudov, who this was his big break, this was his big fight. But ultimately, he couldn't stop a guy who had been stopped twice, who had been stopped by Guido Vianello. But those are my takeaways. Emmanuel Stewart said great fighters know how to fight when they're exhausted. Fury knew how to do that. Chisora did it to a degree a week before. Makhmudov didn't know how to do that. So it was what it was. It wasn't a very good fight.
There were inevitably, before the first bell rung, going to be comparisons between the last week's heavyweight clash and this week's heavyweight clash. Two guys that Fury has fought last week, and Fury's return from retirement to fight a guy who's big, lumbering, coming off a win, while not a super impressive one, yet a win, and who is going to remain in this final chapter of the last era of heavyweights before these new younger fighters come and take over. So I was prepared to have that discussion. I was almost watching the fight with that dynamic in mind. How are we going to juxtapose these two fight nights and the narratives and the fighters and the performances and who's watching, who's not, who's got a future, who doesn't, what is likely the next fight that we could see from anybody who prevails. And I could not believe my eyes from the very beginning, because the one thing that I had never considered might be the tethering factor between the two fights, the thing that both of these events had in common, would be the referee. That's the same guy. That's the same guy. What the fuck is wrong with boxing? That's the same guy.
Yeah, he gets
I had to
rewarded for his
clean
performance last
my
week.
glasses.
Yeah.
No. Not all old white men look alike. That's super racist and sounds crazy. That can't be it's not. Oh, that's the same guy. Okay, fine. BBBOC says that this referee is not corrupt. He has made an honest effort to adjudicate Wilder Chisora and just really wasn't able to do it well, but he did it honestly. It was a sincere effort. Well, what did we learn let's just take that at whole cloth. Okay, it's a sincere effort, but a piss poor job. Is it because he lacks experience or doesn't know the rules or isn't making the right calls? Or maybe is it just he's too small to be refereeing fighters that size? Or maybe he's too fucking old to keep up with the action. I don't know what the problem is, bro, but one thing I know is it wasn't solved in 6 days. I know that much. I know that this guy should not be in the center of yet another heavyweight bout with fighters even bigger than the fighters he was with the previous week and wasn't strong enough to break apart or keep from going out of the fucking ring. He should not be in the center of said action again inside of a week. What is going on? And the reason there's so much clinching and fighting with the free hand, which I don't think is at all illegal. Some people are arguing that that's dirty or whatever. No, you're clinched. They're both holding each other. And Fury's just doing the work that you're supposed to do inside. Wasn't rabbit punching. He was doing good work inside. But when it comes time to break him up, the referee again last night was really out of his weight class. He's having a hard time officiating that fight as well. How does he end up back in the ring? All right. I mean, it took me a few rounds just to get over that part. So I'm glad that the fight was so one-sided, so I didn't need a scorecard because I wasn't. I was just like watching the ref and like wondering if anybody was going to say anything about that. Fury coming back after this retirement, was it like 16 months?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what he's going to look like. That's what he's going to look like. He's 37 also, you know, the same age as Prograis. And he was fit because he did clearly stay in the gym for the majority of those 16 months. He was lighter than he usually comes in. He was trimmer. I thought maybe that was, I mean, look, he was. I know he was. I know you saw something hanging over the line of the, but if you look back, that's a fit Fury. What you got on Saturday night is as fit as you're going to get, right? And I thought, well, maybe this indicates that the movement's still there. Maybe the legs are still happening and he is going to be, you know, light on his feet and moving around and maybe preparing to get angles and outbox eventually a Joshua, you know. I thought maybe there was some worry from me that sometimes when big, heavy guys slim down like that, for some reason their punch resistance goes too. Now, I'm no scientist. This is completely just based on
when Andy Ruiz
what I've experienced, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes they're knocked out easier when you're used to carrying a heavy. Maybe there's more fat in your head again. If that ain't, you know, anatomically correct, so be it. I ain't no scientist, but I'm telling you what I've seen.
Yeah.
Big guys who get smaller somehow have less punch resistance. So I was kind of worried about that going in for Tyson Fury's sake, if Magomedov was able to land something big, and maybe the big fella, after what he's been through with Wilder and Usyk and slimming down, might be more susceptible to being knocked down or knocked out. None of this ended up being in play because Magomedov, while landing some big looping shots, whatever, could never put punches together. He kept falling in after he scored, tying Fury up. It was a snooze fest. It was awful. And if you're going to be lighter in Fury, if you're going to be the light-footed heavyweight that moves like no other heavyweight can, I'm expecting you to spin out of that and keep popping Magmadov with the jab, hit him with the uppercut, get him out of there, punish him. Like I believe a younger, heavier Fury punishes Magmadov.
Yes.
And Magmadov had way too much success. But what people are taking away from this in the wake of it is not unlike what we saw after the Wallen fight. I think they're taking a little too much from it. I do. I think they're taking a little too much from it because the fighter did better than you thought he would do. And really, Magmadov was his own worst enemy in there. Because if he really did have an engine, if he could have fought, he might have caught Fury. But every time he had any success, he just smothered his own success. I mean, it's just a poor fighter. You know, I mean, that's just kind of what it comes down
level,
to.
Relatively speaking.
Relative to this level, yes. You know, I mean, he just beat Dave Allen, who almost got him out of there, right? So if you think about that, and all due respect to Dave Allen, I love that guy. But if Dave Allen can get Magmadov Rocky, there's no reason that Tyson Fury can't get Magmadov out of there. You know, and so I don't think we're looking at a washed Fury. I just think that 16 months out, old in 37 again, relative to the sport we're talking about, ring rust, all of the things. And I think Fury is always, you know, his dad, Sugar, the reality show, his wife, whether she wants him to fight again, the Frank Warren Queensberry and the Turkey Ala Sheikh of it all, and the Netflix, and all of these things that Tyson and his antics and everything come into play when he's not narrowly focused on a fight and there's not a big challenge ahead of him that he really internally respects and understands as a threat, can be average for Fury. You know, he can put in a performance, not unlike what you saw, which may, and I don't think will, inform you as to what you will see next time out. I wouldn't take too much from this Magmadov performance other than it was a poor matchup from the beginning. That wasn't going to be a great fight. And maybe let Queensberry promote their fighter. Because this was, if I'm honest, it was a terrible promotion. It was the wrong venue. The matchups were poor on the card. No, I don't think any of the hype, all these influencers, all this Netflix stuff helped. Didn't sell any tickets. Let the promoters promote. This, if Queensberry's in charge, and Tyson Fury returns, I think it's a different opponent. I think it's a different venue. I think it's a better fight card. I think it's a better night of boxing, and we are all entertained. This is what I mean when I say, where is all of this headed? This felt like a poor episode of a Netflix reality show and not a great night of boxing.
I think, though, one reason I'm a lot more skeptical he can do the old Tyson Fury peaks and valleys in his performances going forward is, of course, the age. And when you talk about Otto Wallin, I covered that fight at T-Mobile 2019, right before the best, by far, the best version of himself ever showed up, and that was Deontay Wilder Part 2. He was hot off a really good performance against an overmatched opponent in Tom Schwartz. And this is kind of what you wanted to see. You wanted to see the Tom Schwartz Tyson Fury, not the Otto Wallin Tyson Fury. And one problem I have for Fury now is, where's the punching power gone? Like, since he stopped Chisora, he had a beautiful uppercut knockout of Dillian White. But ever since then, against Francis Ngannou, a lot of slapping punches. He did buckle Usyk a couple times with the uppercut in the first fight, got his attention with some shots, but never came close to really dropping Usyk. In this fight, Guido Vianello stopped him, and he couldn't come close to stopping Arslanbek Makhmudov. And down the stretch, he ripped some nice uppercuts, hit him with a right hook in the third round off a left uppercut in the southpaw stance. Like, I took inventory of the big shots he landed, and there was just no real effect there. And it makes me wonder, because I would have picked Fury in their primes against Anthony Joshua, because I think a stylistic advantages there. He's a more fluid boxer and fighter than Anthony Joshua. And I think his jab and his ability to switch stances, his feet, his feints, his reflex, all of that would have been enough to offset Joshua's fundamentals and punching power and explosiveness. But now I'm like, I don't know if you can really capitalize on one of the main weaknesses Joshua has, which is taking a good shot and coming back from it not rattled and not getting off kilter when you snap his head around. Now I don't know if he could really even take advantage of that. So, I got to do my tape studies again and all that. And I really think with the three of them, Wilder, Joshua, and Fury, kind of anything's possible right now, because a lot of your analysis goes out the window because you're going off capabilities that they don't meet anymore, not fully at least. They all can resemble certain traits of what they once were, but they're not that guy that they once were anymore. So anything could kind of happen when you mix and match these three right now. But that being said, I'm tempted to favor Joshua. And to your point, once I collect my thoughts and I read some of my comments and people are going, oh, yeah, Itama and Usyk still beat Fury, of course. And Fury says Itama beats Fury. But maybe you're right. Maybe it's overreaction. Maybe the Fabio Wardleys, the Agit Kabayals, the Daniel Dubois, maybe he can still handle those guys. Still has enough guile and skill to do that. But yeah, I don't know, man. I'm favoring Joshua right now. I don't know if that's the fight. I think it was a lot of people are talking about, and I'll let you talk about it, about how Eddie and Joshua didn't play to the beat of Turkey and Tyson's drum there in the ring afterwards. They didn't comply with doing the face-off in the ring and everything. And I do wonder if Joshua, because you said he holds that spite still for Deontay Wilder, and Eddie has said we'll take Deontay Wilder as a tune-up. Maybe they want to get that fight in first, and I don't know. We'll see what goes on with this trio to close their final chapter in this heavyweight book of theirs. But
that finish to the fight with the telegraphed, scripted, embarrassing drama was so cringe. The only thing that may have been more cringe is if Joshua actually did get in the ring and do what was asked of him. The dynamic between organic, reality-driven animosity, fervor, powder keg type intensity between two fighters and this kind of telegraphed, predictable, just self-aggrandizing for the promoter type of show is stark. The difference between the energy, the obvious nature of these things as they try to just manufacture them. It's not only, it's beyond like unappealing. It's kind of gross. It's upsetting because the real exists. Let grass grow through the concrete if you have to, rather than AstroTurf laid down. Wait for the grass to peek through. It'll happen because it's under there. It's going to find its way through, and it's going to be so much more thrilling than you just laying down some AstroTurf. Listen, if you don't have the fight signed, if the deal's not done, and you haven't already at least agreed with the promoters that this is going to happen, and you're going to get in, we're going to sell this thing, we're close enough, so we're going to take this moment and make it something. Don't call them, don't. This is how much His Excellency believes, I think, that he has control over Eddie and Joshua. That I'm sure he had indications that they weren't down for this. And he thought when he put the pressure on them, when the lights were up and he's standing there calling him and Tyson's calling him, that he's just going to force them to do something that they don't want to do and probably already expressed they're not into it. And it isn't down to their relationship with him, clearly. It's about the narrative and the long-standing history between Joshua and Tyson. And Joshua has been led down that aisle by the nose by Tyson Fury multiple times. I've said this to Eddie multiple times. He keeps walking Joshua down the aisle and leaving him at the altar. Well, you're not dealing, I believe, with the same Joshua that you were dealing with pre-Jake Paul, let's say, right? Or what's happened after that fight has changed this man. I believe that. I'm telling you that I've spoken to him now in person for a handful of minutes, on and off camera. I've known him long enough. I've never been to his house for Thanksgiving. I haven't, hung out with him extensively as a close personal friend. But over these years, I've spent time with the guy, and this has changed him. He is a serious person. He was already headed that way, okay? But now I think the realities of life and all of this kind of nonsense have come to bear on the human. We're looking at human life unfold in front of our eyes, regardless of what sport they're in or how big the spotlights are. You have to remember, these are still people going through shit, dealing with life, understanding the world as it comes at them. And the way Joshua understands the world now differs from the way he used to understand it. I believe that. And I think he is showing that in the way he just deals with everything, especially a show moment like that wasn't real, and he wasn't going to get reeled in once again to Tyson Fury's bullshit. Tyson Fury, that's why he said, I'm in charge. I'm the boss. You work for me. Because all of that was him frustrated, feeling like that's what Fury had already done to him. Fury has been the boss. He's made Joshua work for him. He's been yanking Joshua and Eddie Hearn around on a string. Keep teasing him with the fight, then retiring. Like, if you listen to all the little interviews that Joshua did during that moment and then post-fight, you can put it together and look back that everything he's mentioned is something that Fury has already done to him, and he's over it. It's the peppermint patty and the Charlie Brown with the football situation. He's not going to try to kick that ball again. You're not going to embarrass him on Netflix, prime time on your fight, and make him play your role before you sign the deal, before the fight is happening. And I don't believe the fight is happening next. They do want Wilder, and rightly so. Write your own story. Why do you have to do it when Fury finally decides he's ready? As many times as he said he was ready, led you down the aisle, you've promoted this fight, said you're ready, said the fight's almost done, and then one way or another, Fury gets out of it, and you're left holding the bag, trying to scramble for a new opponent. Joshua's over that, bro. He's not having it. And that's what you saw. And that was real. I think what you saw from Joshua was real, and what you saw from Tyson and his excellency and Netflix and even the interviewer from Netflix kept trying to push it but doesn't know this narrative, doesn't really understand the whole history of these athletes in boxing, so she's asking these type of network questions, that's what we were actually looking at. It's not that Joshua's afraid or doesn't want or what. He does not want to play according to Tyson Fury's tune anymore. He's not dancing anymore. And I'll tell you something else. The other promoter who was not promoting this show, who was in the ring, once again, Frank Warren, I don't believe, makes that moment happen if he doesn't have the dots on the I's dotted, the T's crossed, and the contract signed, and everybody participating voluntarily in the moment and authentically wanting to have this fight happen right then and there. This was, I believe, a novice kind of promotion epic fail. It's like, seasoned promoters don't do that. Frank Warren's not going to be embarrassed like that. Eddie Hearn's not going to put himself in an embarrassing moment like that. And I feel like Eddie, you know what I mean? Credit to him for holding his ground. Because once Joshua wasn't getting in the ring, Turkey turned straight to Eddie direct and was like, Eddie, get in.
Shine my
And there was a moment where I didn't know that he was going. You know, and he stood on his ground. He stood by his fighter. I love that. I just say, man, listen, you got the money, you got the networks, you let the promoters promote, please. These guys, whoever would have thought we'd be begging to let promoters get back in and do their job? But they really are much better at it. Just let them do it, man. And then let boxing be boxing. Let organic, authentic narratives happen. Let the grass poke through the concrete. Nobody wants to play on AstroTurf, bro.
Yeah. Joshua said, it is 2026, and I did the thing that matters. I knocked out Jake Paul, and the bitches like me, so I'm the king now. Okay? And yeah, man, Turkey's so used to, I say jump, you say how high, and they didn't jump. So, yeah, anyways, what's interesting, I'll close on this, and then I got to go to mutton busting for my son, who's been excited about that all morning. I'm holding the family up. What's interesting, Joshua, I saw coming from out of the Olympics in the 2012 games. I said, this guy's going to become heavyweight champion, right? And I like Joshua. I actually rooted for him watching the Klitschko fight because I wanted a new era. And I respected Vlad and really thought super highly of Vitaly. And I think very highly of Vladimir Klitschko. They are both all-time great heavyweights, and I think Vitaly in particular, even though he didn't have the career Vladimir had, was really something special. But I wanted an end of this. Their era wasn't good. It was filled with a lot of older fighters and out-of-shape fighters, and they didn't have a lot of competition. They were great, but their competition wasn't. And Joshua, looking like an athlete, I was like, I want this to usher in a new age in the heavyweight division, and ultimately it did. And so, but I'm getting at this to say he was not my favorite heavyweight of this trio. I grew to enjoy Deontay Wilder because he was in other media. He became a pariah with media after the second Fury fight. He didn't want to talk to a lot of media. He would still talk to me, still cool to me, but he didn't want to talk to a lot of media. Excuses as they were looked at by basically everyone over the second Wilder fight and all that. But he was always a warm extrovert. He helped bring some heavyweight boxing back to the United States, including those 3 Fury fights. And again, was a warm extrovert, was an approachable guy at the fights for fans, for people to talk to. Not so much with you, of course, funny enough. No, but even with you, you wound up interviewing him, I think several times, if not a few times after the Till This Day. Right. So, right. He was, it wasn't like, now you have no access to Deontay for the rest of your days. And a lot of athletes can be like that. Tyson Fury, after the third Wilder fight, the shtick got old. And look, I always understand Fury ducked out of the Vladimir Klitschko rematch. He popped for a performance enhancer at some point. He BS'd. He has said one thing and acted another way, maybe countless times if we were to take inventory. But he was always unpredictable and could say, and had a few years there where he really said a lot of great things, and I enjoyed him. I think he's a 1 in a billion kind of character and a larger than life kind of character. Although again, over the last couple years, for me, really, I hopped off the train once he let boxing down in the Ngannou fight. But Fury was unpredictable and enjoyable and could be very intelligent. A little bit like in his own way, the guy he was named after, Mike Tyson, where one moment he's doing some shit that never got caught up like Mike did. Anyways, he could change between being wrong and then being very insightful and even deep and provocative and all that. And then Joshua, who again, I started this by saying I liked Joshua. I saw him coming out of the Olympics and was going to be heavyweight champion. But Joshua felt more like an NFL player to me, an NBA player to me. A, very well-protected image and stayed within the lines to be a handsome, marketable, sporting star. And it worked. But to me, it wasn't as human as Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury, all their flaws and everything ingrained in them. So I say all that to say, again, I'm not some Joshua fanboy, but I think he may be the cleanup hitter to finish the job between these three. And that would be a hell of a way for him to go out. To, like you said, take the Wilder fight next, win that fight, maybe by knockout, then beat Tyson Fury. He may be the guy who gets to close the book on these three.